There we go. Hi, my name is David Schrader. Welcome to Photo Modesto's online gallery. I'm one of the co-founders of Photo Modesto and your host for this gallery tour. Every year for the past several years, February has been Photo Modesto Month in Modesto, with a variety of photo exhibits being hung around town and a featured exhibit being displayed at the Michelin Gallery. However, this year, because of the pandemic, most gallery sites have been closed. Rather than totally cancel our event, we decided to put it online. An added benefit to this approach is that we can invite the artists to join us in discussing their work. The theme for this year's event is literally about themes, titled Themes, Projects, and Stories, and is based on the observation that apart from wanting to display images that are technically adequate and artistic in nature, most photographers also have something to say or have a favorite subject matter that is the focus of their work. At Photo Modesto, we thought it would be interesting to take a look at what some of our local photographers have been focused on. Today's guest is Ed Mendes. He's a major force in photography in our fair city for many, many years. He was the president of the Photo Collective for a long time and was a creative partner of mine in creating Photo Modesto. It's time to find out more about Ed and see what he's been working on. So, welcome, Ed. Come on in. Let's see if we can get you in here. There you are. Hi, Ed.
Hey, David.
Second start, huh? So, anyway, yeah. So, welcome. I'm glad you decided to join us and talk to us about your project. It's called, let me bring it up here. We can take a look at it here. There we go. Backroads and Foothills.
Backroads and Foothills. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
baby.
So I know I've known you for a number of years, and over the years you've done a lot of work. Most of it's in color. This I see is in black and white. You do a lot of portrait photography, weddings, things such as that. This is landscape, and it's black and white. What took you here? What took
Sure.
you to the back roads and foothills?
Well, in the search for something new, my major collections of artwork, my gallery work, has been the Eastern Sierras, Yosemite, the Big Sur Coast, Wyoming, Utah, things like that. And I've shot most of that in color. Or in my early days, I would go back and forth, starting in black and white, then shooting color for a year, and then back to black and white for a time, and to color. But for about a 10 to 12 year period there, I shot specifically color for all of my landscape work and all my gallery work and stuff, because dealing with gallery owners and curators and different art consultants and interior designers and things, they wanted color work, for whatever subject matter it was. So I kind of found that niche, and I kind of drove my work in that direction in terms of doing color landscape and nature photography. But seriously, after all these years and working in those areas for so long, I kind of said everything that I think I could say, or at least that I wanted to say. I found my voice, and I kind of rode with it as far as I could in Yosemite and Wyoming and Utah and all that good stuff. So I wanted to do something completely different. And the foothills and kind of the back roads lent itself nicely to that, as did changing it up completely and shooting black and white. I love black and white photography. I love the tones, and used to
Mhm.
shoot film in the zone system, and I have a passion for black and white photography. And I thought the big skies that I generally shoot with anyway, but that I knew I could get with just kind of driving out and getting lost and shooting the foothills would lend itself nicely to that. So there you go. Just one plus one kind of equals black and white. And the foothills and back roads were great because they were close to home. Living in the
Well,
Central Valley, we have foothills on a couple sides of us, whether it's towards the Altamont or kind of towards Sonora and the Eastern Sierras. So I could easily hop in the car when I saw some clouds move in and be either in the foothills or lost on a road that I didn't really know very well within 20 minutes or so. So I could
So
kind
you
of
said,
go out on a limb.
these foothills and backroads are close to home. So this is your home, the Central Valley. This
It
is where
is,
you.
born and raised in Ceres, and I still live there. It's a great place. We got beaches and mountains within a couple hours on both sides of us. Grew up on my family's farm, so I've always had nature and in my blood, and I just love the area in general. So
Uh-huh.
I thought telling a story of the general area, but how could I tell the story of the general area, but focus a little more on landscape, which is where my passion lies. So foothills kind of lend itself nicely to that.
Great. So before we move on, did you receive formal training as a photographer?
I started my journey in photography at MJC, as
Uh,
I needed an art requirement to be a transfer student, and I can't draw to save my life. Something that my art teacher at the time was not shy to let me know that I kind of stink at drawing, and maybe I should drop out and find something else to do. So I tried my hand at photography, and I've always had cameras around me. My mom's quite the shutterbug. If anyone knows her, she knows how many pictures that she takes. So I always had access to cameras. Fell in love with it. My first photography class and being in the dark room, that turned into a second class and a third. And before I knew it, I was at Sacramento State getting my degree in art and fine art photography there, and tried to put that into use. So
Great. Well, it certainly shows. Let's take a look at some of these fine photos in your collection here. So, eternity,
eternity.
yeah. Which there's a question there for me. A lot of photographers, they're some don't put any titles on their pictures. Others just would put a title that described what's there, like landscape with clouds. Eternity is more of a interpretive title, or so. Is that intentional on your part?
Yeah, all my titles are intentional, and I haven't always done that. Starting out, and you'll see, through here, I'm not always the most creative with my titles, but early on in my career, I name things for the most part pretty basically. Waterfall, Yosemite, California, or
Uh,
whatever it might be. Incoming tide, Big Sur coast, something of that nature. But I noticed that a lot of the big time professional landscape photographers that were making money selling images, their marketing strategy incorporated pulling at people's heartstrings and making an emotional connection with them with the images, and that was not just visually with the image but also through their titles. So guys like Peter Lick and things would come up with these grandiose titles. So I figured, why not give it a roll? Right,
sure.
it works for him, it can work for me too. So for the last 10 years, I don't know, give or take 5 to 10 years, I've been trying to do, much, put a little bit more thought in my titles. So,
Uh, so where did eternity come from?
well,
Is that a legitimate question here?
sure, why, everything's a legitimate question, right?
Yeah.
Well, looking at this, so I go through a process, and I'll write down 5, 10, 15 titles, whatever it might be, and then start to ask people what they like. And then that's kind of how I come up to it. And sometimes some titles just kind of stick out, and I keep coming back to them. But this one, Eternity, just kind of lent itself. The road just seems to go on forever. You combine that with the sense of, I don't know when I took this. It was obviously in the spring. Perhaps it was around Easter. Maybe I was thinking about
what
heaven
happened there?
and things,
Okay.
spiritual things. But the clouds definitely, for me, bring up a sense of, a heavenly body. So combining those two things together, eternity just kind of stuck out in my head, and I kept coming back to that name. So you keep coming back to something, why not use it?
Sure, seems appropriate to me. So what do we have here? Contours. Oh, I can see contours. You talking about
Right?
the land? Yeah.
Yeah, this is very much it probably inspired like by a Brett Weston and Edward Weston image. A lot of
Uh-huh.
negative space or some negative space, which is why one of the reasons why I wanted to create the image. I don't shoot a lot of stuff in midday. When I do, it's usually in black and white. And when I lined up this, I had great clouds, and I knew those shadows in the hills were just going to fall off to zone 0, zone 1, maybe zone 2 at the most. And I just kept thinking, damn, Brett Weston would love to create an image something like this, right? With a lot of negative space, because he loved the negative space.
Right.
So with that
Very
influence in
dramatic.
mind,
Very nice. Very
right?
dramatic.
With that influence in mind, Contours was created.
Okay. Creekside Oak. Do you remember where this was? Do you have any?
I, no idea, David.
Okay.
I don't write down my. I tend to not write down my locations. And then if I ever stumble upon them in my old age, I will be very happy to find them again. I do remember it was created on the same day that Eternity was created. Hold on, I got a cuckoo clock in the background.
Oh, okay.
It was created on the same day that Eternity was created, and my little dog Lulu was with me. So I do remember that, but that's about it. But I was just drawn to that the oak tree just hanging out and the beautiful curve of that little creek on the grazing pasture. I don't know
Uh-huh.
if you can see cows in the back of this
I
one or
can see
not.
them. Yeah.
Um, so it's just some cows were kicking back grazing. It just looked like a beautiful spot to graze.
Mhm.
Looked like I could picture, myself having a picnic under that oak tree with the great clouds. I just thought it was a beautiful scene. So
Yeah,
set up
very
my
much.
tripod.
Yeah, and those of us who go driving in the back roads and foothills, it looks familiar, but where, I don't know either. So,
Who knows?
what else we have? Oh, Foothill Afternoon.
Now this one I do know where I took.
Okay,
This was on the way to Yosemite, just outside of Merced on what is that highway 140? Excuse me.
140, yes.
Yeah. So I've always loved the foothills there, and there's always been a number of images that I've wanted to create in that particular area, but I've never been driving through when the clouds were as I wanted it. So
Yeah,
I've been revisiting this area, um, this little stretch on 140 for probably about 8 years. Well, maybe 8 to 12 years. Stopping occasionally, hoping the clouds would be right, taking off occasionally, but they never quite fit until I was heading up for maybe a workshop or something in Yosemite. And this particular day, as I was driving through, everything fell together, and the picture that I had in my mind finally came to fruition. So I always love the nice little foreground elements of those rocks leading right into the rolling hills and those beautiful oak trees on the horizon. And the key feature that always eluded me was a great cloudscape in the sky. So finally, on this particular day, the three elements came together.
yeah. Has a nice feeling of just being kind of wide open and serene at the same time. Just a lovely feeling.
Yeah, and the
Uh,
nice wide, the wide. I always try. I love shooting wide. That way, it kind of feels like you can step into the scene. So,
yeah. So,
Foothill
Foothill
Sunrise.
Summer.
I guess technically, I guess this is the first image that I created in this series. I made it on a photo collective field trip a long time ago. I don't remember when. I want to say 2004, but it may have been a little bit. It may have been later. It may have been like 2008 or something of that nature. Oh, I'm sorry. I found this location during a photo collective field trip, but I went back the next morning to actually create the image. I hung out with a great group of cool cows, about 50 cows that were in the pasture just on the other side of that fence for about 30 minutes as I created the image. And yeah, it was a great morning, just finding this cool little stone fence that led to the hillside, leading right into that beautiful oak tree.
Oh, yeah. And as when you gave the date for this was first of all a film
Oh
negative.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. This is it would have been shot on probably Velvia. Yeah, a 645 negative, a medium format,
Uh-huh.
and then that would have been processed, obviously sent out to be scanned, and then from there, getting the digital file back to do the darkroom work, the digital darkroom work.
Okay. Yeah, it has a little bit different quality feeling to it.
It's very different. I made it into black and white for this specific um, project.
Yeah.
Usually, this is a color image
Okay.
that I use with it or that I display.
Well, there you go. There's your Foothills.
Foothills, that's a great title.
Yeah,
So
isn't
yeah,
it?
so they're not all winners title wise, David. So not always inspirational. Um, or you can just use Foothills and let your imagination run. So this is just outside Knights Ferry on Highway 120.
Uh-huh.
Again, a grouping that I've always enjoyed, but I've never actually stopped to create an image. This particular day, I was going out. It was when you kind of got the project in your head and you're going out to hunt for images, you force yourself to stop because so many other times you're on your way somewhere else, and you're anxious to get to the final destination. Well, finally, this was the final destination. So I had some nice clouds to play with, kind of overhanging that little grove of trees, the stands of trees, and yeah, I decided to battle the traffic, and I came out on top and alive. I didn't get hit by a car because this is right off the highway.
Right.
And
Yeah, a couple of thoughts. I understand what you say. I've driven that road many times and wanted to stop and take pictures, and there's no place to stop. I thought, oh my gosh, I get killed if I start setting up here. So you were lucky. The other thing that I noticed is that there are great cloud formations in your pictures so far, and I'm jealous of that. One of the problems of photography in California is that we have this bland sky all the time, and the number of days when we have clouds that can add to the picture seem to be in the minority. So I'm very impressed with your cloud formations in these
well,
pictures.
that's one of the great things about photography, and one of the most difficult things about photography is that, and unfortunately, it seems like today it's too common that people will settle for any sky that they find, and then they'll add in clouds, they'll add in a sunset lighting, they'll do whatever they need to in editing, swapping in a clouds from another picture. One of the most difficult things with landscape photography is portraying a true sense of what you saw. So even a picture like this isn't something that happens in one attempt. It happens in 20 or 30 or 40 attempts over the course of 5, 8, 10 years. So you just keep coming back, and sometimes that's why a project like this can take 15 to 20 years to put together.
Absolutely.
Hey,
Oh,
hanging clouds.
almost looks Mount Fuji, Japanese a little bit.
You know what? Absolutely. And I have to admit, I was inspired. I love the work of Michael Kenna. If everybody out there is familiar with Michael Kenna, you know what I'm talking about. If you're not familiar with Michael Kenna, get out there and check him out. He is one of the greatest photographers ever. But he does a lot of work in Japan, and his work is very zen. And you want to talk about negative space? Michael Kenna does a great job with that. A lot of stark black and white. So when I was out shooting, I was scouting over on I do believe this is over near Pacheco Pass, um, on the Dinosaur Point area, somewhere around there. And I think I was hiking back to my car after doing some trails, and I saw this lingering cloud that was moving towards this peak. So I set up the tripod and waited for about a half hour, slapped on like a red filter in post. I added a red filter in my Nick Color Effects Pro to really darken up that sky a lot, to make a great contrast. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of poke out a little bit of that, the top of that mountain peak, to kind of point towards those clouds.
Very nice. Very nice.
Well,
They're grazing.
so here is one of those images that I do not remember. I don't remember much about this, to be honest with you. I don't remember. Yeah, I don't remember the day
It's
I
a
took
great
it.
image. I know.
Man, yeah, I don't remember. Unfortunately, I'm sorry to say, I don't keep notes
Yeah.
for the most part. I do know that this is over on like the Sonora side. I guess is that the eastern side of our foothills. Um, just on some little back road that I was just driving and trying to get lost. And in my head, I got lost enough that I don't know where in the world this
Well, that's okay.
location
I mean,
is.
we don't have to pin down those things. What's your impression looking at it? I
You know
mean,
what?
suppose you came upon this years later, and you of course wouldn't remember where it is, but
I love horses.
yeah.
We always had a horse growing up, at least one. My mom grew up with horses. My mom was, in the rodeo queen stuff growing up, and she barrel raced. And I just
Wow.
have a huge affection for horses. And wherever I go, if I can spot some, I'm drawn to them. So when, we would go out to my workshops in Wyoming, I would love to go for a couple days beforehand to scout and try to find some of those big horse herds at like the Triangle X Ranch and a couple other places, and hang out with them for a little bit during the afternoon. So as I was driving through this little road, the horses is what drew me to the area,
Right.
to the scene. So once I saw them and they were so calm and relaxed with me being there, um, they weren't checking me out. They didn't really care all that much. At that point in time, I just knew I wanted to find a composition of some sort. So I used those two oak trees as well as I could, the one kind of in the center and the one on the far right, kind of as my composition points.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, and then I just waited for the horses to turn, so they didn't all have their behinds towards the camera all at once, particularly the one under the tree and the one in the foreground. I just waited forever for them to turn so they'd be in profile for me.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's about it. I look for pretty pictures more than just
Yeah,
about
yeah.
anything else than a deep.
But you've also used the word wait a couple of times, several times.
I
That
believe patience.
these
Patience is
aren't
a
these
true
aren't
virtue.
snapshots. You're composing. You're waiting. You have something in
Patience,
mind. Yeah.
patience is a virtue not only in life but particularly in photography and especially in landscape photography. Landscape photography in general is creative, created a millisecond at a time. But sometimes it takes an eternity almost to get to that millisecond.
Yeah.
So you got to be willing to wait, and that's a lot of the work.
To wait and to go back to the same spot
Yeah,
sometimes again and again.
to not settle.
Yeah. Whoa. Now here's a title.
metamorphosis,
Metamorphosis. Yeah.
as those young almond trees will eventually turn into a full-grown mature tree like that big old oak tree there. So yeah, driving out somewhere around LaGrange is where this was created, on just some very small um, 2-lane road. I just ran across this newly planted orchard. I loved the rolling the rolling field,
Uh-huh.
and the lines of the almond trees just led right into the that big old oak tree there in the center. And what can I say about the sky? The sky definitely played
Oh, the
along
sky is
with me.
amazing. Yeah.
So I did emphasize in my post processing, I did do some burning. You see the foreground and the midground. Um, I did want to emphasize that. So I did do some dodging and burning to kind of emphasize the dark into the light, to draw your eye a little bit more into the center oak,
Hmm.
on a technical aspect.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just found it a great juxtaposition, old to or young leading right into the old. So it's kind of just walking you through life, with those almonds right into the old
Uh-huh.
tree. And then I guess eventually into eternity with those clouds, if you want to take it a step further.
There you go. Yeah. Maybe I should go back and I ran them off too soon.
As a
There you
young
go.
child, you're planted, you grow into a mature. I'm touching my screen and I realize no one can see me. And you mature into that majestic oak tree, and you live your life, and then eventually you know depending on what you believe in, hopefully ascend into eternity, so with those clouds. So
Wow. The whole story.
the
Yeah.
whole story, if you want to
Yeah.
read into it. So
Right there. Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that's coming up for me as we go through these images is I was not born here. I wasn't raised here. I was born in Wisconsin on lakes, rivers, in forests. And when I moved here and my parents settled in the Central Valley, I looked around, I said, there's nothing here. It's a desert. Why do people want to live here? And it's not green. And it's taken me a lot of years. And what's happening with these pictures is, for me, you're showing me the beauty that's here. That I mean, I have since come to appreciate this on my own too, but it just, in juxtaposition, taking me back to when I first came, in memories and thinking, there's nothing here. It's like, no, there's a lot here when you
there
know
is a
how to
lot
look.
here.
Yeah.
You gotta hunt for it a little bit. Because it's true.
Yeah.
Going through other areas of the country, you can just drive down the highway sometimes, and you have uh, tons of majestic beauty, on each side of the highway going through certain areas. Um, and you don't always have that here, or, going through cities and things like that. But when you get off the beaten track a little bit and take some of those roads less traveled, we do have a lot of beautiful places here if you just want to get out there and look for them a little bit.
Right. Well, now we'll move on. There we go. Oak and Storm. Whoa. There's a sky.
Yeah, Oak and Storm. Okay, so this was actually one of the first images I made. This is before I had the project in mind. Um, and I was just hanging out with my cousin Garrett, and wanted to just get out. I was hanging out with him, and we just had a storm move through, and I was just like, "Hey, bud, I'm going to grab my tripod, hop in the car. I'll show you what I do for a living." And that was it. Headed up to Knight's Ferry, and one of those roads near Knight's Ferry, I just took a right, and I don't remember exactly which road this one is, but just found this great oak that was standing alone by itself in the middle of just like a spotlit area. And I said, "This is as good as any. I'm liking this scene, so let's do it."
Yeah.
And here you go.
Powerful, very powerful image. That's the sky.
Yeah, I got some nice storm clouds that day. So Rolling Oaks, and again, this is trying to find a title that will connect with people, right? Rolling hills and oak trees turn into rolling oaks. So it's basically how that worked out. But this is actually generally a color image that for this project I'm using as black and white. And I think it works pretty well. I remember going back and forth when I originally was working on this a couple years ago, and I didn't know which one I necessarily wanted to go with. I decided on color, but it works well in black and white too. So I just love the sense of vastness. It just seems like the hills almost go on forever, as does the sky. And you just really get, in my opinion, you really get drawn into it. So like you can step right into the image. So.
Well, I like the black and white version. I can't imagine it in color. This is a very powerful image.
So, yeah, it does work pretty well.
Yeah.
I do admit. Oh, okay. So Sea of Oaks is actually made like 100 feet from the previous one.
Okay.
Which is why. Okay, go back to the previous one, David. What did I name that one?
Sure. Rolling Oaks.
Oh, Rolling Oaks. Okay, so then if you go to the where I'm standing, I took this one about, I don't know, 100 to 150 feet to my left. So a very productive day to get two images that I really liked. They were in the span of about maybe an hour or 45 minutes to an hour. And again, I really liked the play on the rolling hillsides. And I just wanted to use that. So I just waited it out on that particular day for about an hour until I finally for whatever reason, I decided I wanted a little bit of light to highlight some of those oak trees. And I just waited until I got it. So it took an hour or so, but yeah, things really fell into place that particular day, I think.
Oh.
2 for 1.
2 for 1.
Well, as I told you, I grew up on a farm, and I love silos. And more than silos, I love sunlit metal in black and white. So driving on my way to Grand Teton National Park in Wyoming, these are the foothills in Idaho that kind of lead into Wyoming. And it's one of my favorite areas. A lot of large farms in the area. And on this particular day, driving up there, everything fell into place with the clouds. And my normal drive that it takes, I don't know, 45 minutes to get through this area, give or take, I spent about 4 hours creating images on this particular day. So I just wanted to highlight those. The clouds are just moving so fast, and the light was just moving and just changing constantly on the ground. And I really wanted to highlight those silos. So I just waited it out for about 40-50 minutes until I finally got a couple spotlights hitting them, and went to work as soon as I did.
Yeah. When I first saw this image, I said to myself, "Oh, I've been there. I know that. It's on the road from it's on the road from Idaho Falls to
yeah, because I created this image along with the next one I think you probably have, going up to the workshop, one of the workshops that you were with me, and so we were probably going up on the same day, just a couple hours difference or something like that. So yeah. And this is my favorite grouping of silos in the world. Like I said, I love lit metal. And some of my favorite images in black and white I've ever made is a very simple image of some wrenches in my dad's shop that are just beautifully lit. They're a combination of some of his wrenches and my grandfather's wrenches. And they're very simply lit. But you want to talk about the beauty of black and white. It'll that lighting on that metal allows for the full range of tones,
Uh-huh.
and really an expansion of midtones that just makes the image glow.
Wow.
And I have another image from the silos in Modesto. If you guys know the silos in downtown Modesto,
Mhm.
the Grange Company used to own it, by MJC East Campus. And another one of my favorite images is of the silo weights, the hanging weights, and a steel door that has a similar luminosity. So that's also why I love this image, is because the lighting that falls on those metal silos, the luminosity that comes off it allows for such a full range of midtones that they almost glow. So I'm personally very much drawn to this image because of that. Whether it's a good image or not, besides that, that's for interpretation from somebody else. But
Uh-huh.
I quite enjoy it.
Well, yeah. Another thing that's occurring to me looking at these images is it reminds me of how disappointed I am that we can't that we didn't have a gallery display of these. I mean, just the way you're talking about, the light on the metal, it's when you see it in person, it's such a different experience than seeing it on a screen like this, so to speak.
It
And
really is. And see, I as you know, I like to print large,
yeah,
and having something like this printed in a 30 by 40 is, it's pretty, in my
oh,
humble opinion, it's pretty remarkable.
it'd be astounding. I would love to see it. So I don't know, maybe when the pandemic's over and we get back to actually hanging things on gallery walls, we can find a way to display some of these.
Yeah.
So here we go.
Oh.
We're back
Oh.
to, is this, oh, I know what that is. Where
Yeah, you know
Nice
what that
Ferry.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, what is there to say about this image? I don't know. So I think a lot of people know the tree, but also a lot of
Mhm.
people don't know this tree. Um, I first shot this tree in 1999 during my photography 2 course, my basic photography 2 at MJC, when we were doing our mural project. And so this was the first time I ever printed a 30 by 40. And it was of a negative of this tree that I made. And so I've been coming back to it off and on for 20 years, trying to get a sky that I truly enjoyed. And this wasn't the morning, though it was close. But the skies weren't doing exactly what I wanted them to. I love this tree, as you can see, the entire root system um, flow down the rock. And so I wanted to go back when I had more expertise than I did 20 years ago and create a new image. But again, this is one of those things where coming back and back and back, nothing ever fell into place. And this morning wasn't perfect either. So I decided to pull out my 10 stop neutral density filter, and the clouds were moving a little bit and they weren't playing along with me exactly what I wanted to do. So I slapped on that 10 stop neutral density filter and turned this into like a 3 or 4 minute exposure, and in doing so really caused those clouds to streak nicely and the water to become nice and
So,
smooth,
yeah.
and became a pretty interesting, not what I was looking for, but it became a pretty interesting image that I think was good enough for a gallery print.
It impresses me.
So it's one of those things you got to kind of vogue sometimes. Sometimes your first thing that you think you're going to do doesn't quite work out, and you gotta move with it. You got to be quick on your feet a little bit.
Yeah.
So this
So,
is yeah, this is so there's a great windmill farm again going in from Idaho into Wyoming. And this is the same general area as the silos earlier.
mhm, uh-huh.
You know, I love windmills. I love to go up in the Altamont. I've always been fascinated by the Altamont there with all the windmills and over by Rio Vista. But this grouping, I've always had a hard time working in the Altamont because of access. And I guess the way the hills are, just to get a nice big shot that I always like, I can never seem to get the access that I need. And this particular grouping out in Idaho is right along some railroad tracks and allowed me to kind of set up and take my time. And now, lucky for me, we had some great clouds that were moving through too. So I decided I really wanted to layer the image nicely as the clouds moved by, because I really wanted the layering of the light foreground to the dark to the spotlit uh, windmills to the lit high contrast clouds, and then they were very low lying clouds at the time, and then let that fall off into a nice dark blue sky. And then I ended up cropping it into a panoramic because there was just simply no more clouds above that, and it was a little too much black. So I decided to just crop it down tighter, draw the viewer's eye into the interesting section, or what I deem to be the important, interesting section. So
Right.
panoramics seem to do that for me.
Whew. That is one fine art collection. And as I
Well,
said,
thank
I would love to see it in person sometime. Uh, so I think that's the last one in this grouping. I added a couple of other pictures from your previous work because like you said, you do work in color too,
Mm-hmm.
and it's some of I think, yeah. So
Very
just so that people can see other kinds of work you do. These are two that impressed me.
Beauty
One are,
Divide there on the left,
yeah,
taken in Zion National Park on the way to the hike to the subway.
uh-huh,
And the image on the right was taken a couple years ago during a lightning storm, just behind my parents' house on our property. Um, I was actually coming home from running errands, and the sky was just lighting up. And I was trying to bust it home as fast as I possibly could, and racking my brain of what I can do to grab my equipment as fast as possible and where I can possibly go for a composition. And the only place I could possibly think of that might be interesting was the falls and the canal behind our property, and to just use that water to let it run off into infinity and use those falls for a nice strong foreground subject. So luckily I set up, there's a walkway, a catwalk or whatever, a bridge, a small footbridge across the canal at that area. And I just set up with my metal tripod, which people have
oh, yeah,
reminded me.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I didn't really think about it at the time. It's raining and lightning, but yeah, I guess that wasn't the smartest thing. But that's the type of thing that when you get into the groove, I do not care if I get struck by lightning as long as I can get the photograph. But anyway, it was pitch black and I couldn't focus. So luckily I had my flashlight, and that power pole there, the first power pole, I just shined my most powerful flashlight on it and tried to focus, use that as a focal point, and then just stop it down, and then just opened up my shutter for a few minutes and just waited for the lightning to expose the image. So I was there for like over an hour, getting a handful of lightning strikes, and the only image that was in focus was the very last image I took, which was this one.
This,
So
yeah. Wow.
luckily I stuck around for one more picture.
So, thank you.
Thank you,
This
David.
was
It's
a
always
great
fun.
tour. I mean, it really, it's always, well, I always enjoy talking with you, but it's also very educational. You know, you're a very thoughtful photographer. These aren't snapshots. You know, you visualize, you think, you wait, and it's nice to hear about the process that goes into these very fine art prints. So,
Well, thank you. I appreciate you saying so, and I always love to talk about photography, whether it's my own
great.
or somebody else's. It's a great subject.
Okay. So, anyway, thank you again for being here, and we live in the same area. I'll see you around.
Absolutely.
Okay.
See you
Okay.
later, my friend.
Okay. Let's